The emergency session of the Galactic Council convened in the massive crystalline chamber orbiting Prime, its translucent walls offering a breathtaking view of the twin suns. Ambassador of the Empire adjusted her breathing apparatus as she reviewed the final vote count on her. The decision had been unanimous among the 12 founding species. Humanity would be expelled from the Galactic Council, effective immediately. "The motion carries," announced High Chancellor, his 4 eyes scanning the assembled delegates. "Humanity's membership in the Galactic Council is hereby revoked. Their aggressive expansion, military buildup, and refusal to comply with the Non-Proliferation Accords leave us no choice." The delegate hissed in approval. "Their ship designs alone violate 17 different treaties. Those massive dreadnoughts they call exploration vessels are clearly weapons of war." Ambassador Wei Ming sat motionless at the human delegation table, his weathered face betraying no emotion. Behind him, his small team of advisors whispered urgently among themselves, but remained silent. He had expected this outcome for months, ever since the incident at the mining station where human security forces had repelled a pirate raid with what the Council deemed excessive force. "The human delegation will have 48 standard hours to vacate Council space," continued. "All trade agreements are suspended, diplomatic immunity is revoked, and human vessels are prohibited from entering Council-controlled systems." Finally stood, his movements deliberate and calm. The chamber fell silent, expecting protests or pleas for reconsideration. Instead, the human ambassador simply nodded. "Understood," said, his voice carrying clearly through the chamber's acoustics. "We'll need time to recall our citizens from Council territories." Leaned forward, surprised by the lack of resistance. "You have 72 hours for civilian evacuation. Military vessels must depart immediately." "Agreed," gathered his materials with unhurried precision. "We'll begin the evacuation process within the hour." The ease of acceptance unsettled several delegates. The representative, a being resembling a walking tree, creaked as he shifted. "Ambassador, surely you wish to address the Council's concerns, perhaps negotiate terms for future cooperation." Paused at the chamber's exit, turning to face the assembled aliens one final time. "The decision has been made. We respect the Council's sovereignty and will comply fully." He smiled, though it didn't reach his eyes. "We wish you prosperity in your future endeavors." As the human delegation filed out, an uncomfortable silence settled over the chamber. Many had expected anger, threats, or at least attempts at bargaining. The quiet acceptance felt wrong somehow. "That was unexpected," murmured Tuaa. "Humans usually fight everything." High Chancellor called for order. "The matter is settled. Let's proceed to the next agenda item, the proposed trade route through the nebula." Meanwhile, in the corridor outside, activated his secure communicator. "Admiral Martinez? Yes, it's done. Begin Protocol 7 immediately. All civilian evacuation ships are to depart within 60 hours. Military vessels." He paused, considering his words carefully. "Military vessels are to withdraw to the outer rim as planned." The evacuation began with mechanical efficiency that impressed even the Council's monitoring stations. Human cargo ships and transports moved in perfectly coordinated patterns, emptying research stations, mining facilities, and diplomatic outposts across dozens of systems. There were no protests, no delays, no last-minute appeals. On the human colony world of New Geneva, families packed their belongings with quiet determination. Dr. Sarah, who had spent 15 years studying fauna, carefully secured her research specimens. Her daughter Emma watched through their apartment window as transport ships descended from orbit like metallic rain. "Why do we have to leave, Mom?" Emma asked. Sarah paused in her packing. "Sometimes grown-ups make decisions that affect everyone else. The important thing is that we stick together." What the departing humans didn't say, what they kept carefully hidden behind diplomatic smiles and efficient compliance, was that they had been preparing for this moment for over a year. Every evacuated facility had been quietly stripped of anything truly valuable months ago. Every strategic resource had been relocated to human-controlled space. Most importantly, the Council had no idea that humanity's withdrawal was actually a carefully orchestrated retreat to positions of their own choosing, with supply lines they controlled completely. As the last human transport cleared Council space, transmitted a final message from his flagship. "Evacuation complete. All Council territories are now clear of human presence. We thank you for the opportunity to participate in galactic affairs. The message was polite, professional, and gave no hint of what was coming next. 3 months after humanity's departure, the first signs of trouble began to manifest across Council space. It started small, delayed cargo shipments, minor equipment failures, communication glitches that seemed random and unconnected. The Trade Minister dismissed the initial reports as temporary disruptions caused by route adjustments following the human evacuation. We always knew there would be some turbulence, Minister assured the Council's Economic Committee. Human involvement was more extensive than we initially calculated, but the free market will adapt. The delegate wasn't convinced. Her species had evolved as apex predators, and her instincts sensed something predatory lurking beneath the surface of these seemingly random problems. The pattern troubles me. Food shipments to 17 different colonies, all delayed by exactly 48 hours. Maintenance schedules for asteroid mining equipment across 12 systems, all experiencing identical component failures. But her concerns were overshadowed by more pressing matters. The Galactic Council was negotiating a massive infrastructure project with the Collective, a consortium of machine intelligences that promised to revolutionize interstellar commerce. The potential profits were enormous, and most delegates preferred to focus on opportunity rather than problems. Meanwhile, in the Outer Rim territories that humans now called home, Admiral Martinez stood before a holographic display showing the entire galactic arm. Red indicators marked every location where human-made components, human-designed systems, or human-established trade relationships had been integrated into Council infrastructure over the past century. "Status report, Colonel Harrison," she requested. Colonel James Harrison, a weathered logistics officer, highlighted sections of the display. "Phase 1 complete, ma'am. We've successfully disrupted supply chains to 47 systems. Critical components manufactured in our facilities are no longer available to Council territories. Replacement parts for human-designed machinery have been discontinued." "Casualties?" "None, ma'am. As ordered, we've ensured no action directly harms civilians. Food shortages are temporary, alternative suppliers exist, they just take longer to reach their destinations. Equipment failures are inconvenient but not life-threatening." Admiral Martinez nodded approvingly. Humanity had learned the art of economic warfare from masters throughout their history, but they had added their own twist, precision. Every action was calculated to cause maximum disruption with minimal harm to innocent lives. The true genius of the human strategy became apparent when the Agricultural Consortium attempted to fill the gap left by departed human food producers. Their ships arrived at the designated systems only to discover that the orbital loading facilities had been designed specifically for human cargo vessel configurations. The docking ports, gravity generators, and even the basic software protocols were incompatible with non-human technology. Dr. Len, the economist, spent sleepless cycles analyzing the cascading effects. What humans had built over decades of patient integration wasn't just infrastructure. It was a web of interdependence so subtle that even the Council's most sophisticated analysts had failed to map its full extent. "They didn't just participate in our economy," he explained to a hastily convened emergency session. "They became essential to its basic functioning. Every major trade route relies on navigation software they developed. Half our orbital stations use atmospheric processors they designed. Even our communication networks run on quantum encryption protocols their mathematicians created." High Chancellor's expression darkened as the full scope of the problem became clear. "Are you saying they sabotaged their own systems before leaving?" "No, Chancellor. That's the elegant part. They didn't need to. They simply stopped maintaining them, stopped providing updates, stopped supplying replacement parts. The systems are failing naturally as they reach the end of their operational." The revelation sent shockwaves through the Council. Who prided themselves on technological superiority discovered that their most advanced manufacturing plants depended on human-designed molecular assemblers. They found their military communications scrambled because human cryptographic keys were no longer being updated. Aw's tail lashed in frustrated anger. "They turned our own dependence against us. Every convenience they provided, every improvement they offered, it was all preparation for this moment." "But this is economic warfare," protested the representative, its mechanical voice carrying electronic distortion. The Treaty of Galactic Commerce specifically prohibits such actions. Ambassador's response came not through diplomatic channels, but via public broadcast to every inhabited world in Council space. His image appeared on screens throughout the galaxy, the same calm expression he had worn during his final Council appearance. To the beings of the Galactic Council, he began, his tone conversational and reasonable. We have received complaints regarding supply disruptions and system failures across your territories. We want to assure you that these issues are not the result of any hostile action on humanity's part. He paused, allowing his words to sink in before continuing. When the Council voted to expel humanity and terminate all trade agreements, you ended our obligation to provide goods and services to your territories. We are simply honoring your decision by no longer conducting business in Council space. The legal technicality was infuriating in its simplicity. Humanity wasn't attacking anyone. They were merely refusing to trade with former partners who had expelled them from the galactic community. Under interstellar law, they had every right to choose their trading partners. As the broadcast ended, emergency meetings erupted across Council space. The prosperous galactic civilization that had so confidently expelled humanity was beginning to realize the true cost of their decision. And this was only the beginning. 6 months into the crisis, the Galactic Council's confidence had evaporated like atmosphere from a breached hull. What had begun as minor inconveniences had escalated into system-wide failures that threatened the foundation of interstellar civilization. The breaking point came when the system's primary trade hub experienced a catastrophic failure of its artificial gravity generators. The massive orbital station, home to 3 million beings from dozens of species, began to tear itself apart as structural stresses exceeded design limits. Emergency evacuation procedures activated automatically, but the evacuation ships themselves relied on human-designed navigation systems that had been steadily degrading without updates. Captain Orr of the Emergency Response Fleet watched in horror as passenger transports tumbled chaotically through space, their pilots struggling with malfunctioning instruments. All vessels, this is Fleet Command. Switch to manual navigation and maintain minimum safe distance from the station. The evacuation stretched across 18 desperate hours. When it was over, not a single life had been lost, but only because human-trained emergency coordinators among the station's crew had improvised solutions using backup systems that still functioned. The irony wasn't lost on anyone. Human knowledge had saved lives even as the absence of human support created the crisis. Dr. Len's economic projections grew darker with each passing day. The economist had calculated that replacing human-integrated systems would take a minimum of 15 years and cost more resources than the Council's combined annual budgets. Even then, the replacements would be inferior to the human-designed originals in efficiency and reliability. We're not just losing economic productivity, he reported to an emergency council session. We're losing technological advancement. Human innovation drove 40% of all patents filed in Council space over the past decade. Without their research partnerships, our development has effectively stagnated. High Chancellor's 4 eyes darted between displays showing crisis reports from across the galaxy. Food riots on colonies, manufacturing shutdowns in space, communications blackouts affecting entire sectors. How did we not see this coming? Ambassador shifted uncomfortably in her environmental suit. Their integration was too gradual, too beneficial to question. Every human proposal improved efficiency or reduced costs. We welcomed their contributions because they made our lives better. They were patient, Ah added grimly. Humans think in longer timescales than most species. While we focused on quarterly profits and annual budgets, they were planning decades ahead. The realization that humanity had spent a century systematically making themselves indispensable was both impressive and terrifying. They had never forced their technology on anyone. They had simply made it so useful that rejecting it seemed foolish. Meanwhile, in human space, the effects of the economic blockade were being felt in reverse. Cut off from Council markets, humanity had been forced to become entirely self-sufficient virtually overnight. The challenge had sparked an unprecedented wave of innovation and cooperation among human colonies. Captain Sarah, Ambassador's daughter and commander of the exploration vessel New Horizon, reviewed reports from the frontier worlds. Colony productivity is up 30% across the board, Admiral. Without cheap council imports, we've had to develop better manufacturing techniques. The engineering solutions our people have created are remarkable. Admiral Martinez studied the data with satisfaction. Necessity driving innovation, just like always with humans. What about morale? Higher than expected. People understand what we're doing and why. There's a sense of purpose, of proving that humanity doesn't need the council to thrive. The human strategy had evolved beyond simple economic pressure. Cut off from galactic society, human exploration fleets had begun mapping systems beyond council space, discovering new worlds and new resources. They were building something entirely independent, something that didn't require galactic approval or cooperation. This expansion didn't go unnoticed by other species outside the Council's influence. The Confederacy, a loose alliance of silicon-based, sent diplomatic overtures to humanity. The crystalline beings had been seeking partners for deep space exploration, and human engineering expertise combined with their mineral processing capabilities created compelling possibilities. The galaxy is larger than Council space, Captain reported to Admiral Martinez during their weekly briefing. We're finding entire regions with resources and opportunities the Council never explored. Some of these worlds are incredibly rich in rare elements. But the most significant development came from an unexpected source. Dr. Sarah, the who had been evacuated from New Geneva, made a discovery that would change everything. Working with samples she had smuggled out during the evacuation, she identified a new form of quantum-sensitive bacteria that could revolutionize faster-than-light communication. This organism exists in the atmospheric layers of gas giants throughout this region, she explained to the Research Council. With proper cultivation, we could create a communication network that's faster and more reliable than anything the Council uses. The implications were staggering. Not only could humanity develop superior technology independently, but they could potentially surpass Council capabilities entirely. The species that had been expelled for being too aggressive and militaristic was transforming into something the Council had never anticipated, a rival civilization with the potential to eclipse their achievements. As news of human innovations leaked back into Council space through unofficial channels, a new fear began to spread among the founding species. They had expelled humanity expecting them to fade into obscurity. Instead, they had created a motivated, unified opponent with every reason to prove them wrong. The comfortable assumption that the Council represented the pinnacle of galactic civilization was beginning to crumble, and some beings were starting to wonder if they had made the greatest mistake in galactic history. 1 year after the expulsion, the first human ship appeared at the edge of Council space in over 6 months. But this wasn't a refugee vessel or a diplomatic courier. It was something the galaxy had never seen before. The HSS Defiance emerged from a hyperspace jump with technology that made Council sensors struggle to maintain a lock. Its hull seemed to shift and flow like liquid metal, and energy readings suggested power generation capabilities that exceeded theoretical maximums for vessels of its size. "Unknown vessel, this is Border Control Station Omega-7, came the nervous transmission from the patrol ship that intercepted it. You are entering restricted Council space without authorization. State your purpose immediately. The response came in perfect galactic standard, but with an undertone of confidence that hadn't been present in human communications before the expulsion. This is Captain of the Human Stellar Navy. We are conducting routine exploration operations in unclaimed territory. These systems are under Council jurisdiction, the captain protested. Your vessel must submit to inspection and escort to the nearest processing station. Negative border control. These systems lie outside the territorial boundaries established in the Treaty of Galactic Commerce. Since humanity is no longer bound by that treaty, we recognize no Council authority here. The legal implications sent shockwaves through Council space. The systems in question were border regions that the Council had claimed but never actively developed. Under interstellar law, if humanity was no longer a Council member, those claims might indeed be void in human territory. High Chancellor convened an emergency session as reports poured in of human vessels conducting surveys throughout disputed regions. The ships appeared to be using technology that surpassed Council capabilities in every measurable way. Faster engines, more powerful sensors, defensive systems that seemed to bend light itself. "How is this possible?" demanded. 15 months ago they were equals, now they appear technologically superior. Dr. Len had spent the past year analyzing human development patterns, and his conclusions were disturbing. They weren't equals, Chancellor. They were restrained. Every technology they shared with the Council was made compatible with our existing systems. They never showed us their cutting-edge capabilities. The revelation that humanity had been deliberately holding back their technological advancement for the sake of galactic cooperation was devastating to Council confidence. Beings who had voted to expel humans for being too aggressive were discovering that human aggression had been carefully controlled and limited. Ambassador accessed classified intelligence reports that painted an even more concerning picture. Our deep space monitoring stations have detected massive construction projects in the outer rim. Orbital shipyards, manufacturing complexes, research facilities, all built with unprecedented speed and efficiency. "Construction materials?" asked Oa. "That's the troubling part. They appear to be using resources we've never, materials with properties our scientists can't explain. Intelligence suggests they've discovered mining opportunities in regions we considered barren." The human expansion was following patterns that made Council strategists deeply uncomfortable. Unlike the Council's approach of gradually absorbing systems through diplomacy and economic integration, humans were engaging in rapid territorial consolidation. They would arrive in a system, conduct thorough surveys, establish permanent installations, and move on to the next target within weeks. More disturbing were reports of non-Council species eagerly cooperating with human expansion efforts. The Confederacy had formally allied with humanity, providing mineral extraction expertise in exchange for human manufacturing technology. The Void Dancers, energy beings who had rejected all previous contact attempts, were apparently sharing navigation data for uncharted space lanes. Captain Sarah stood on the bridge of the New Horizon as it emerged into the Terminus system, humanity's acquisition. The system contained 3 habitable worlds and asteroid belts rich in rare elements that the Council had dismissed as inaccessible due to dangerous radiation fields. "Radiation levels are holding steady within tolerable ranges," reported her science officer. "The new shielding technology is performing beyond specifications." The breakthrough in radiation shielding was another human innovation that had emerged from their forced isolation. Access to Council medical facilities, human researchers had developed protection systems that were not only superior to existing technology, but opened up entire regions of space that had been considered uninhabitable. "Begin deployment of mining platforms," ordered. "Establish orbital infrastructure according to standard protocols." What the Council didn't know was that standard protocols now included defensive capabilities that could devastate an attacking fleet. Every human installation was designed to be self-sufficient and heavily protected. The species that had been expelled for excessive militarization had learned to never again be vulnerable to political pressure. The psychological impact on Council space was perhaps more significant than the technological or economic effects. Species that had confidently expelled humanity were now watching former subordinates expand across the galaxy with capabilities that suggested they had been patronized rather than truly partnered with. Young beings across Council territories began questioning their leaders' decisions. Why had they rejected partnership with the most innovative species in the galaxy? How many opportunities for advancement had been lost due to political fear of human ambitions? AA received a private communication from her government's intelligence service. The message was brief and deeply troubling. "Human exploration fleets have been detected in 17 systems beyond our furthest sensor range. Preliminary analysis suggests they may have developed faster-than-light communication technology superior to ours. Request immediate strategic assessment." As the scope of human advancement became clear, a new fear began to emerge among Council leadership. They had expelled humanity to prevent them from becoming a dominant force in galactic affairs. Instead, they had inadvertently created a rival civilization that might soon surpass them in every measure of technological and economic capability. The question was no longer whether humanity would seek revenge for their expulsion. It was whether they would even consider the Council worthy of notice as they built their new galactic empire. 2 years after humanity's expulsion, the impossible happened. The Galactic Council formally requested a meeting with human representatives. The message arrived at the human capital world of New Terra through quantum channels, its tone carefully diplomatic but unmistakably desperate. Admiral Martinez stood before the Human Stellar Assembly, a governing body that had emerged from necessity during the isolation period. Representatives from 57 human colonies filled the chamber, their faces reflecting the same mixture of satisfaction and wariness that had defined humanity's response to galactic affairs since the expulsion. "They're calling it a diplomatic summit to address mutual concerns," Martinez reported. "High Chancellor personally signed the invitation, and they're offering to host the meeting in neutral space." Councillor Stone, formerly a junior trade and now humanity's foremost expert on galactic politics, accessed her data pad. "Our intelligence networks indicate this isn't just diplomatic outreach. 3 council systems have experienced complete economic collapse in the past month. The Agricultural Consortium filed for bankruptcy last week. Even the collective is requesting emergency economic assistance." The transformation of the galactic situation was complete. What had begun as humanity's punishment had become the Council's crisis. The interconnected systems that humans had helped build and maintain had proven impossible to replace effectively. Non-human alternatives were consistently inferior, more expensive, or simply incompatible with existing infrastructure. President elected to lead the Human Stellar Assembly considered the implications carefully. "What's their real position, Admiral? Are they negotiating from strength or weakness?" "Intelligence suggests weakness, but desperation can make beings dangerous," Martinez replied. "Our expansion has them concerned about territorial integrity. We now control or have access to resources that exceed their combined holdings. More importantly, our technological advancement has made their military capabilities obsolete." The truth was that human warships had evolved far beyond the vessels that had once concerned the Council. The defensive capabilities that humans had developed during their isolation could now project power across galactic distances. A single human dreadnought carried firepower equivalent to an entire Council fleet, while human defensive systems could neutralize attacks that would devastate conventional forces. Dr. Sarah, now Director of Research, provided the scientific assessment. "They need us more than we need them, but reconciliation could benefit both parties. The question is whether we can trust them not to attempt another expulsion once they've recovered economically." Captain Sarah, recently promoted to Admiral and tasked with overseeing human expansion operations, offered the military perspective. "Our strategic position is unassailable. We control 47 systems they've never surveyed, maintain alliance relationships with 16 non-council species, and possess technological advantages they can't match. We can afford to be generous, but we shouldn't be naive." The debate continued for hours, reflecting the fundamental question of humanity's future relationship with galactic civilization. Some representatives advocated for complete independence, arguing that the Council had proven itself unreliable and potentially hostile. Others favored selective cooperation that would allow humanity to benefit from galactic trade while maintaining absolute sovereignty. President ultimately called for a vote on the core question: should humanity engage with the Council's diplomatic overture? The decision was unanimous. Humanity would attend the summit, but on their terms. 3 weeks later, the meeting convened aboard the human vessel Reconciliation in the neutral drift zone between human and Council space. The ship itself was a statement of human capabilities, larger than most Council stations, with technology that seemed to bend physics itself. High Chancellor arrived with a delegation representing all 12 founding species, their ships looking primitive beside the gleaming human vessel. As they were escorted through corridors that hummed with barely contained energy, several delegates exchanged nervous glances. Ambassador Wei Ming represented humanity once again, but his position had changed dramatically. No longer a supplicant seeking Council approval, he now spoke for an independent civilization that had proven its ability to thrive without galactic oversight. "Chancellor, delegates, welcome aboard," said as the parties assembled in a conference room whose walls displayed real-time views of nearby star systems. "We appreciate your willingness to travel to neutral territory for these discussions." His diplomatic training couldn't entirely hide his discomfort at the role reversal. "Ambassador, We come seeking dialogue about mutual cooperation and the resolution of ongoing conflicts." "I'm not aware of any conflicts," replied mildly. "Humanity has scrupulously avoided council space and honored all terms of our expulsion. We've built our own civilization and established our own alliances. What conflicts concern you?" The question forced the council to confront the reality that their problems were self-inflicted. They had expelled humanity and discovered that they couldn't function effectively without human contributions. Now they needed to request help from the civilization they had rejected. Ambassador spoke carefully. "The economic disruptions following the termination of our partnership have created hardships throughout council space. We believe renewed cooperation could benefit all parties." "Partnership," repeated thoughtfully. "That's an interesting term. Previously, humanity was a member species subject to council authority. What kind of partnership are you proposing now?" The negotiations that followed would reshape galactic civilization. Humanity wasn't interested in rejoining the council as subordinates. They had moved beyond that stage of their development. Instead, they proposed a new model, the Treaty of Sovereign Cooperation. Under the new agreement, humanity would provide technological assistance and economic cooperation to council space, but as equals rather than members. Human territory would remain absolutely sovereign, human expansion would continue unrestricted, and most importantly, humanity retained the right to terminate cooperation at will. "You're asking us to accept human expansion into regions we consider our sphere of influence," protested Ah. "We're offering to share the benefits of that expansion with you," corrected. "The alternative is continued isolation while humanity develops relationships with other galactic powers." The threat was subtle but clear. Humanity had proven they could thrive independently and was already building alliances with species outside council control. The council could either accept partnership with an ascending human civilization or watch as humanity surpassed them entirely. The final treaty was signed 3 days later, establishing humanity as the galactic community's major power. The species that had been expelled for being too aggressive had returned as technological and economic leaders, fundamentally altering the balance of galactic civilization. As the human delegation prepared to depart, President transmitted a final message to the assembled council delegates. "Humanity bears no grudge for past decisions. We understand that fear often drives political choices, but we hope this experience has demonstrated that diversity of thought and approach strengthens our galactic community rather than threatening it." The silent departure that had begun as humanity's punishment had become their path to independence and ultimately to a stronger position than they had ever held as council members. The consequences had indeed been deadly, deadly to old assumptions about power, control, and the true nature of strength in an interconnected galaxy. Humanity had learned that sometimes the best response to rejection isn't argument or pleading. It's excellence that cannot be ignored. The emergency session of the Galactic Council convened in the massive crystalline chamber orbiting Prime, its translucent walls offering a breathtaking view of the twin suns. Ambassador of the Empire adjusted her breathing apparatus as she reviewed the final vote count on her. The decision had been unanimous among the 12 founding species. Humanity would be expelled from the Galactic Council, effective immediately. "The motion carries," announced High Chancellor, his 4 eyes scanning the assembled delegates. "Humanity's membership in the Galactic Council is hereby revoked. Their aggressive expansion, military buildup, and refusal to comply with the Non-Proliferation Accords leave us no choice." The delegate hissed in approval. "Their ship designs alone violate 17 different treaties. Those massive dreadnoughts they call exploration vessels are clearly weapons of war." Ambassador Wei Ming sat motionless at the human delegation table, his weathered face betraying no emotion. Behind him, his small team of advisors whispered urgently among themselves, but remained silent. He had expected this outcome for months, ever since the incident at the mining station where human security forces had repelled a pirate raid with what the Council deemed excessive force. "The human delegation will have 48 standard hours to vacate Council space," continued. "All trade agreements are suspended, diplomatic immunity is revoked, and human vessels are prohibited from entering Council-controlled systems." Finally stood, his movements deliberate and calm. The chamber fell silent, expecting protests or pleas for reconsideration. Instead, the human ambassador simply nodded. "Understood," said, his voice carrying clearly through the chamber's acoustics. "We'll need time to recall our citizens from Council territories." Leaned forward, surprised by the lack of resistance. "You have 72 hours for civilian evacuation. Military vessels must depart immediately." Agreed, gathered his materials with unhurried precision. "We'll begin the evacuation process within the hour." The ease of acceptance unsettled several delegates. The representative, a being resembling a walking tree, creaked as he shifted. "Ambassador, surely you wish to address the Council's concerns, perhaps negotiate terms for future cooperation." Paused at the chamber's exit, turning to face the assembled aliens one final time. "The decision has been made. We respect the Council's sovereignty and will comply fully." He smiled, though it didn't reach his eyes. "We wish you prosperity in your future endeavors." As the human delegation filed out, an uncomfortable silence settled over the chamber. Many had expected anger, threats, or at least attempts at bargaining. The quiet acceptance felt wrong somehow. "That was unexpected," murmured Tuaa. "Humans usually fight everything." High Chancellor called for order. "The matter is settled. Let's proceed to the next agenda item, the proposed trade route through the nebula." Meanwhile, in the corridor outside, activated his secure communicator. "Admiral Martinez? Yes, it's done. Begin Protocol 7 immediately. All civilian evacuation ships are to depart within 60 hours. Military vessels." He paused, considering his words carefully. "Military vessels are to withdraw to the outer rim as planned." The evacuation began with mechanical efficiency that impressed even the Council's monitoring stations. Human cargo ships and transports moved in perfectly coordinated patterns, emptying research stations, mining facilities, and diplomatic outposts across dozens of systems. There were no protests, no delays, no last-minute appeals. On the human colony world of New Geneva, families packed their belongings with quiet determination. Dr. Sarah, who had spent 15 years studying fauna, carefully secured her research specimens. Her daughter Emma watched through their apartment window as transport ships descended from orbit like metallic rain. "Why do we have to leave, Mom?" Emma asked. Sarah paused in her packing. "Sometimes grown-ups make decisions that affect everyone else. The important thing is that we stick together." What the departing humans didn't say, what they kept carefully hidden behind diplomatic smiles and efficient compliance, was that they had been preparing for this moment for over a year. Every evacuated facility had been quietly stripped of anything truly valuable months ago. Every strategic resource had been relocated to human-controlled space. Most importantly, the Council had no idea that humanity's withdrawal was actually a carefully orchestrated retreat to positions of their own choosing, with supply lines they controlled completely. As the last human transport cleared Council space, transmitted a final message from his flagship. "Evacuation complete. All Council territories are now clear of human presence. We thank you for the opportunity to participate in galactic affairs." The message was polite, professional, and gave no hint of what was coming next.